What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Meaning of Podcast. I'm Ace.
This is RB3.
And this is the podcast where we talk about your favorite directors and the deeper meaning within their movies. And this episode, we're going to get a little animated. Not really. I mean, unless RB3 wants to do that in post, which he doesn't want to do.
No, I definitely don't add any animation in post.
RB3 is going to literally 3D animate us and the time of this episode comes out.
Yeah.
That is not true. But we are doing Brad Bird this episode, the director of The Incredibles. The reason we're doing this, guys, is because The Incredibles 2 is coming out, and apparently a lot of people want to see that movie because it's tracking to be probably the biggest Pixar opening of all time, right?
Yeah.
Which
wouldn't be surprising because it's the Pixar hype and the superhero hype kind of converging.
That's such a good point. That's great. Yeah, I mean, think of the previous one is Finding Dory too.
Yeah, Finding Dory was a super sequel. Did like $1 billion worldwide. Yeah. That's the highest grossing Pixar movie of all time. Did you know that? That's crazy.
Yeah, I remember because I did a Finding Dory thing for the Schmoes like 2 years ago. No one saw it.
Oh, and was it animation? What was it? Animations or animation? What was it?
Yeah, no, that wasn't it. That wasn't the one I'm talking about. But animate, I forget what it was. I didn't make it up, guys. Someone else made it up for me.
Yeah,
I used to talk about animated movies on the Schmoes, and then they were like, "Nah, no one wants to hear that." And I was like, "Can I talk about anime on the Schmoes?" Yeah. And then they were like, "Sure," and then they were like, "Nah."
And then, but you had indie picks too for a little bit.
Indie picks, I like doing that. I think I did it twice or 3 times. So I was like, I tried, guys. I just want to talk about stuff that people don't usually talk about, like Hereditary. Did you see that movie?
I have not seen Hereditary.
Oh,
man, how come?
God.
Yo, every time I walk anytime I walk into anything these days, like I just did a thing with the Wangers today, and like literally the first thing I when I walk in, they're like, hey, "Did you watch Hereditary?" Like, no, I haven't watched it.
That movie shook me to my core, dude. I went in as blind as you can be. I honestly didn't know what the movie was about.
I didn't even know it was coming out.
Yeah, like I went in super blind. I just know A24 horror movie. Sure, I'll watch it with my buddy who invited me. Mm-hmm. And I walked out and I turned to him. I'm like, screw you, man. I'm so mad at you right now because you disturbed me to my core by watching this movie. It's intense.
Okay,
it's a lot.
I gotta peep that then.
It hurt me. But anyways, guys, before we get started with our episode and go through all these movies that we're going to talk about, we want to read your comments from last week's episode, which we didn't do last week's episode. We didn't read your comments. Apologies for that. Won't happen again. Maybe a few more times, but I'm just saying it won't happen again.
Yeah.
We want to read your comments from our Star Wars episode, which was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, we went for 2 hours and 20 minutes talking.
Let's not do that again. Apologies if you guys said all through it. I mean, I got one positive comment on Twitter. And
we got 21 comments on this episode.
Hey, man, that for us, that's like 300 comments, bro. But let's start with a negative one that says Simon B.W. Khan says, "You purposely left Solo out of the thumbnail, right?" Or yeah.
Actually, no, I did not purposely leave out Solo out of the thumbnail. Actually, what I literally did was type in Star Wars posters in the Google Images. That was the first thing that came up from StarWars.com, and I used that as the
great. That's what I would have done.
Yeah. So no shade towards Solo.
Yeah. Let's read another comment that says David Mikula says, "When are you guys going to do a Danny Boyle episode? He did just get announced to do the next James Bond film. Ooh. Come on." Yeah, that'd be an interesting one.
I'm Danny salivating Boyle? At the mouth to do a Danny Boyle episode.
Oh, I thought you said to see that James Bond film.
Oh, that too. I mean, that too.
That to me, I mean, yeah. Daniel Craig for one final Bond as James Bond with a Danny Boyle directed one.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
I mean, Danny Boyle, to me, has mastered every single genre that he's worked in.
He's pretty dope. He's pretty good. And he's very... I personally think he's underrated, too.
Oh, definitely.
Because everyone gets a lot of attention, but he doesn't seem to get a lot of attention.
He's made Best Picture winners. A lot of people consider, Sunshine one of the best sci-fi movies, like, ever,
Yeah.
There was the one he did with James Franco when he cut off the arm.
Oh, yeah, 127 hours?
127 hours, yeah. Train Spotting.
So
just a catalog of Slumdog Millionaire is legit one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, because that one got a tiny bit of backlash.
Yeah, it did. After it won Best Picture.
Yeah, they were like, it wasn't even that great. There was a lot of people.
I love that movie, man.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I remember watching that a while back. But we'll definitely do a Danny Boyle episode. I think it's something that is worth doing. Guy Cole says, a great episode. In my opinion, the best way to enjoy Star Wars is just enjoy the movies that you like. For me, it's all of them. And don't look on social media at all the debates, and just remember it's a movie for all the family. Dude, can I tell you a story? So I hung out with a friend of mine. I'm not going to name names, but and this person isn't on social media, but they're a Star Wars fan. And I was like, all right, let me break down everything that's going on in Star Wars fandom, because you're not on social media.
Right.
And they're a big Star Wars fan, so it's very interesting to hear, like, after, like, me spieling out everything that's going on in Star Wars fandom, they were like, what? That sounds insane. What's going on?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, staying off social media is kind of, or, like, not going into it, right? I mean, you can, see debates and you can choose to, like, go away. But I'm like, dude, I don't want to hear some dumb people debate, man. I want to hear smart people debate, but not dumb people. And most comments and most of those people that debate it are pretty dumb. But it was so interesting to see their reaction to me telling everything that's going on with the Star Wars fandom, and also to see their opinion on Solo, because I've said it before, hyperbole is killing fandom. It absolutely is. Hyperbole is killing fandom. And I've heard Dan Murrell talk about it too. Shout out to Dan. That he says, like, everything is worst movie ever or best movie ever. You suck if you don't like it. And it's like, there can be average movies. There can be okay movies. There can be movies that are kind of fun and kind of enjoyable. But when it comes to, like, these big tentpole movies like Star Wars and DC movies and Marvel movies, it's all hyperbole. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but to see that reaction from my friend of mine was just pretty funny. I was like, this does sound stupid when I say it out loud. This sounds so dumb when I say it out loud. But I don't know. I think hyperbole is awful. So
I try explaining to people all the time that what's happening with the Star Wars thing. Like, to one of my buddies, like, it's a civil war in the Star Wars community right now. He's like, what? I just watched The Last Jedi. I thought, like, it was okay. But then also, I mean, I agree with the hyperbole thing, because, like, you can't be in the middle of the road with anything these days.
And that's where we were with Solo.
Yeah.
At least personally, I was. I was like, it was all right. It was all right. I had fun moments.
And people are like, you hate it.
Yeah.
You left it out of the thumbnail.
Yeah. Seriously. Or like you can't admit that it's awful, right? Right? And it's like, no, that's not what we're saying at all. We're just saying it's an
same
okay
way
movie.
You could think Infinity War is just an average movie. Infinity War is just an average motion picture.
I take
that's
the
that's the
persona.
hyperbole. Yeah.
No, that's fine. You can totally say that.
Yeah.
You can totally say that if you feel that it didn't. And there's a lot of people who have your opinion on that movie too. I felt that there was a lot of them. So it's a totally fine thing to do. But I just feel like I explained this to my friend as well. I said taking stances now is starting to make you, like, that's when it gets a little bit too much, when it makes you a target, and I hate that. If I say I like The Last Jedi, or pretending, right? If I say, oh, I love The Last Jedi, oh, then you must be a feminist, blah 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 blah, who hates all this, and screw you. And I'm like, well, because I like The Last Jedi. Right. It starts to become so politicized and so, like...
Well, yeah, I remember doing a tweet, like, a while back ago, talking about, how much I appreciated that Last Jedi put, a lot of thought into, the script, you know what I mean? Like, it's not... Some of it's kind of shitty, but the parts that work really, is very deep and very symbolic and all that stuff. So I put a tweet, kind of saying, I appreciate that Black Panther and Last Jedi were talking about it, and people were like, yo, what, the Last Jedi movie shows, like, I wish there was a way we could, like, communicate, like, nuance, you know what I mean? Like, because I don't even really like the Last Jedi. And I just appreciate that there was, some, like, a message to it, some symbolism, some meaning. I mean, we do the meaning of podcast. So, like, I appreciated that. I wish there was a way to communicate to people that, and when you talk about taking stances, it ends up putting me on, like, the pro Last Jedi stance, even though I don't really like it, but I still have to defend it, so I don't know.
It's too much.
Yes,
man.
it's always.
I read a comment that's I don't even know what podcast it was listening to. I listen to a lot of Star Wars podcasts. I'm like drenched in it. I rewatched all the movies, obviously, when we did the episode,
right?
And I rewatched it again when I was with my family. And my mom was like, "Are you sure you want to see this again?" And I'm like, "Let's do it." I can watch Star Wars more than any other franchise. I've talked about that, but I was listening to another podcast, and I read some comments into those, like, you just can't admit that The Last Jedi is the worst Star Wars movie ever. And I'm like, why would you comment that? And that doesn't even make any sense. I don't know. I'm gonna stop.
What I do think critics do need to get a little better at is like initially being like, oh yeah, I really love The Last Jedi, and then like as soon as fans start like turning on it, they're like, oh, Last Jedi was the worst movie.
Name names, bro.
I'm not naming it. No, I'm not naming names.
You gotta name names, because I feel the exact same way. There's some people, I'm not gonna name names, but I was like, didn't you say you liked it? Didn't you love this movie? And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I mean, I don't know what's going on with Star Wars. I don't know what's going on. And it's like, okay, all right, I see you, Mr. Never mind.
I think you're doing a very specific impression.
No, I was not. It's IndieWire guy. I'm talking about the IndieWire guy. Anyways.
By the way, I do love IndieWire because whenever
I love IndieWire.
You know, it's funny when IndieWire puts out a review and they give something like everybody loves. Like I remember when Interstellar gave it like a D- or something, and like literally like the critic had to like tweet out like, "Hey guys, I'm sorry. Not sorry, but like he's like I'll revisit." Or
that's
something.
kind of what happened in my opinion with Bright too, because the first tweet that we saw from Bright from a critic was like, "Worst movie I've ever seen in my entire freaking life," and we were like, "Oh shit, all right." So this is what we kind of, and then when we saw Bright again with Bright, it's all right.
It's all right. It's not bad.
It's not terrible, but it's not great either. It's all right. It's an okay
better than
movie.
Zootopia.
Ooh, I don't know about that, but it's an okay movie, and I think it's fine to make an okay movie. And I just remember that it's the same with Bright as far as word of mouth, and that was a word of mouth coming out of The Last Jedi too. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
Where everyone was like, best Star Wars movie ever. Well, I don't know if you saw those tweets. I like seeing people's tweet reactions.
Yeah. I remember you texted me.
I texted you.
Yeah.
And I texted you about Solo too.
Yeah.
Those Solo ones, I was like, oh shit, this doesn't sound good. Anyways, guys, let's get back on track with your comments. Rex Timalu says, give the prequels some credit. They have positives, and don't ignore the originals had flaws too. I love the prequels. I don't know if you listened all the way through to my episode. I adore the prequels, in a deep. I rewatched the prequels with my family again, and that's something that a lot of people don't do. I thought I gave them some credit. I thought I talked about the writing is probably the weakest part as far as dialogue is terrible. But I love the story of the prequels. I love the crazy political mumbo jumbo, crazy stuff that you don't going on. And I love the Phantom Menace, the dry political Phantom Menace that everyone hates. I love. So I don't know. I think I gave the prequels some credit, and I don't know about the original having flaws. I talked about how some of the scenes in the original ones are kind of silly. And people don't remember that. They literally block that out of their mind. They're like, Star Wars isn't silly. And I'm like, have you seen A New Hope? Have you seen Return of the Jedi? I mean, that's some silly-ass shit that goes on. Yeah. And people don't remember those scenes because they kind of block it out of their mind or give it up to nostalgia. But
I think people expect this new serious thing to Star Wars now, you watch... It's particularly the first Star Wars, that's very 70s sci-fi,
Oh yeah, trust me, I rewatched it. I was like, ooh, all right, some of this stuff, all right.
But I mean, it's still fire. I mean, it still holds up
yeah.
very well. I mean, it probably holds up better than most of the sci-fi movies during that time.
Sure.
But just when you look at some of it, it is kind of cheesy. It is kind of, and that's what they were going for. And that's what they were going for.
Yeah.
But it's just when you watch something like Rogue One, it's like this dead serious war movie. Yeah. It's like a totally different. I don't even know how it evolved to that point.
Yeah. And you love Rogue One, right?
I love Rogue One. I think is I appreciate it more as I watch it. And not as I watch it. I feel like I appreciate it more as more movies come out.
Sure.
And I start to see, I guess, the directions they're kind of going in.
Sure.
And I appreciate it on that front. But I'd probably rank it second out of the new.
Sure.
New stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Not bad.
Yeah, I mean that it's interesting when it comes to major franchises, but Star Wars, man, come back to us. Come back. Let's be at peace. Let's hold hands.
Give Star Wars back to Marvel. Give Star Wars back to Marvel. No. Give Star Wars to Donald Glover. Let him run it. Let him run the show.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't let him do Deadpool, the animated series. So
yeah,
because he wants to push buttons, and people don't want to have their buttons pushed.
I still think he should have been the one to finish Solo.
That would have been an interesting choice. Yeah. I mean, that's a lot to take on, though. So.
Hey, man, he directed great episodes of Atlanta. He's an Emmy Award winner.
That's true. That's true. All right, guys. That's it for comments. Once again, please leave us your comments every week. It's the best way for you to communicate what you're feeling each episode, guys. If you're an iTunes listener, what up? We also want to give you a shout out.
Yes.
But if you want to leave us comments as well, feel free to jump on YouTube and we'll read your comments live on camera. So you can listen to your comments being read on the show as well.
Ooh.
So we appreciate it, guys, and keep doing that every week because we do see you. We see you. Let's now get into Brad Bird.
Yeah.
Mr. Bradley Bird. He is mainly an animation director. I don't know if you want to...
He's made a transition in live action.
Sure.
And, kind of transitioning from the Star Wars conversation, right? He was originally considered to direct Episode 7, The Force Awakens.
That's right. I remember that.
Way,
I was going
way
to say,
back.
Man, I totally remember that.
He was one of the first names, and apparently it was Michael Arndt's script that he was given. But he was so passionate about Tomorrowland, he turned down Star Wars to do Tomorrowland, thus handing. And it's also like a weird connection of how he ended up getting to like how Colin Trevorrow ended up directing like Jurassic Park. And it was all kind of this weird thing. But yeah, he was originally tapped to direct Episode 7. And he wanted, I guess the idea was to make it the same kind of structure, like the female protagonist, all that kind of stuff. But yeah. So I mean, he started off in animation, but transitioned into having this gigantic career
because of the success out of those animated movies. I mean, that's kind of what we saw with another director who was supposed to direct Star Wars and kind of did, Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Right. Oh, right. It's the same thing.
It's so similar because you kill it in animation. And then they're like, all right, I mean, these guys can make movies. And the same with Brad Bird. They see the potential and they see the craft that he does with animated movies, right? Mm-hmm. Because people assume animated directors should, stay in their lane or have to stay in their lane or that transition is a little too tough. I've heard that quite a bit. I don't know if you've heard that at all, but it's a very interesting world, especially in Hollywood too, because people are making these animated movies that are directed towards children, so you want to tackle something a little bit more serious or like a PG-13 or an R-rated movie. People are extremely skeptical when you hear about that because it's like, wait, the guy who did those movies, you can't possibly do this serious movie, but he's done it and he's proven it.
And I think part of what makes Brad Bird stand out as an animation director is that he has a very cinematic style when it comes to directing animation, right? Like when you look at all of his animated films, they're all like widescreen. They're all very, have these very like glamorous camera shots, very realistic, details and all that kind of stuff. So for him, I'm sure, putting that much attention into detail for the animation can translate onto film. And I think that really works out, especially, I read that book. I mentioned it a lot on the show Creativity Inc. for the Pixar, written by Pixar's Ed Muncham. And he talks about how Brad Bird, as an artist and as a director and as an auteur, he hand selects every single, a lot of times the animation directors just kind of give notes and let the animators go wild with it. But for him, he's very much involved in the process and very hands-on. And, with all of Pixar movies, of course, they dive very deep into the story before they even think about touching any computers, any animation. They dive very deep and make sure that story's locked down. So he's involved the animation all the way up until that point from the very beginning as well. So
yeah, I mean, talent is talent, man. Yeah. Right? I mean, that's the biggest thing you'll learn when you come to Hollywood, especially when it comes to directors and the kind of directors that studios are picking. Right? I mean, you'll hear negative and positive stories when it comes to up and coming directors who only directed a movie or two, and then they get picked up for Spider-Man: Homecoming. Tom Watts, right? That's his name.
John Watts.
Watts, and then Tiny with James Gunn is another one. Like
Colin Trevorrow.
I mean, they're popping out like crazy, and the thing that the studio says when they say, "Why would you pick him?" and they always kind of say what I just said: talent is talent. Mm-hmm. We saw the movie, we liked the movie, and we think this is a talented director who can take our franchise and make it a great movie. Now, bad things can happen, like X-Men Origins Wolverine, which is another case of that.
Bullied or Josh Trank.
Josh Trank is another perfect example of that, where they're like, "Oh, let's make this movie. I pitched it," and then they just get bullied into making it. David Fincher was another example
for Alien 3.
For Alien 3, remember that? Because I saw we both saw that, and he talked about how he's like, "No, guys, this is what this is what I pitched to you guys. I wrote this. You read my script, and now you're saying you said yes, and now you're saying no in the middle of production. That happens a lot, and it happens more with directors who are up and coming people that they selected, because sometimes they do just want to have someone just point camera and then we'll do everything else.
Right.
So that's something that has been a negative in Hollywood. But we've seen more. I feel like that was a couple of years ago. I feel like we're seeing more positive results of that. And for the most part, the director gets all the credit. Taika Waititi, James Gunn, I just said it before.
Ryan Coogler kind of stepped up, yeah.
That we see examples that work, and when they work, they get credit for it, which is they don't say Marvel did it again. They say, Ryan Coogler killed it.
Yeah.
Taika Waititi is talented. Like, that's the kind of stuff people.
I'm telling you, when I was at the premiere for Black Panther, before the movie even started, bro. Before the movie even started, they were just like, director Ryan Coogler. Literally, the entire theater like stood up and started clapping for this dude. Like,
that's crazy.
It was crazy. Like, we hadn't even seen the movie yet.
It's like, what if this sucks?
Yeah. Dude gets a standing ovation, So I mean, but it was worth it. In the end. But yeah, I mean, but you're right. When it's able to happen successfully, and it's a different time, obviously, than back in the day where you were like a Spielberg and you kind of had to build up to like doing bigger budget stuff, or your, other directors had to kind of build their way up. But I mean, also too, movies back then were just a lot cheaper to make. So like, even though it was kind of an indie film for Lucas doing American Graffiti, then going to something big like Star Wars. Star Wars wasn't that big. Like, the budget for that was relatively small.
My favorite thing is when I saw the Carrie Fisher documentary on HBO, and my favorite thing is like, she was like, I thought it was a B movie.
Yeah,
I thought it was like, like a B movie is like Sharknado.
Right.
I thought it was that, and I was like, really? That's what you thought of Star Wars?
Yeah.
So she went to the premiere like super embarrassed to be in it. She tells a story, and it's great because you kind of see like they were just like having fun and being ridiculous and silly with silly guns and silly stormtroopers. And this stuff is just weird. That's what they thought while acting in the movie.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be the greatest hit ever. But I just think it's funny, right? Because that's the kind of thing as far as like making these movies. It wasn't such a big deal when they were making it. They were just like, whatever, it's just a crazy sci-fi movie.
Right.
But when it came out, they were like, yo, Star Wars is huge. Not really. It wasn't like during production. It wasn't really a big movie, right? That's what you just said right
exactly.
Now.
No, I mean exactly, and I mean that's the biggest part of it too. When directors have like full autonomy over what they're given. I mean, because I was listening to Ryan Coogler talk about Black Panther. He's pretty much just working on it, on his own. We're getting some words with Kevin Feige and all the people who work there at Marvel, just kind of getting some advice. But then like it was still mainly his like vision, and he
said that very clearly.
Yeah, and same thing with Taika Waititi too. Yeah,
that's right. Because he talked about in some interviews, he talked about the script, and he's like, no, this was me. Like, this was my idea. I wanted to see like what does it mean to be African, and all these themes that he put into the movie are Ryan Coogler. Right. And you see interviews with Feige who says, yeah, we let him do our whole thing, like his own thing, basically. Right. Which is very brave. And sometimes that backfires. Ava DuVernay is another example.
Oh yeah, with Wrinkle in Time.
Wrinkle in Time, a movie that we both. I forgot your opinion on this movie.
I think we both didn't like it.
Okay, I was going to say, I wasn't sure if you're like, dude, you remember? I loved it. And I was like, did you love it? I don't remember. But that's another example where a lot of people on Ava's corner was like, oh, it wasn't even her. It was the studio. This wasn't even her thing. This, and she was like, no, it was me. It was all me. This was my creative vision coming up to screen. So if you didn't like it, then you didn't like what I said. Because a lot of people, I don't know if you remember that, were like, oh, it's the studio putting their hands in the movie and telling her what to do and not letting her be involved. And it's because it was a first $100 million project for a woman, right?
Yeah, a black or first $100 million live action project for a woman of color. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people were like defending her like crazy because it was getting a lot of negative results. And then she had to step up and be like, no, that was my vision. Disney let me do what I wanted. They didn't like overlord me, basically.
Right. I mean, Disney's good with that. I mean, like with Incredibles, for example, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to talk about Incredibles a little later, but that is the first Pixar movie that was not which was written and directed by somebody who's not in house, right? Who wasn't one of the original, who wasn't one of John Lasseter or one of the OG like founders. He kind of came into Pixar, and he worked on some of the previous films and gave consulting and advice, and then wrote and all that stuff. But then he eventually built his way up to not built his way up, but he created The Incredibles all by himself. You look at most Pixar movies, it's usually like 12 writers involved. With Incredibles is the first time it's just one writer, one director.
Yeah.
And it's the first time that you really understand that the Pixar animators are, they animate as artists, but then there's also a collaboration with the directors. It's more than just the CGI, overcoming the CGI barrier is actual authorship being put into these movies.
Sure. So that's a very important fact.
Yeah.
He got his start doing animation, basically.
Right.
Amazing Stories is his first IMDb credit in 1987.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that, unfortunately.
Yeah, me neither. Let's move on to Bart Simpson. He did a short called Do the Bartman, which is a
Simpsons spinoff.
Simpsons spinoff, which got him eventually to do some episodes of The Simpsons in 1991 and 1990. He did Like Father, Like Clown, and he did Krusty Gets Busted. So if anyone's a giant Simpsons fan, which I am not,
yeah. I'm a pretty decent fan. Those are both episodes that concern Krusty, and I think one of them is with the serial killer played by Kelsey Grammer. I can't remember the guy's name, but he did a lot of animation work for The Simpsons, and I think he did stuff for I don't know if it's credited or unaccredited for animation work for like King of the Hill and all these other like shows. So he has a foot in the animation sphere.
Sure.
From the very beginning.
I'm only reading his director credits.
Right, but that's the same thing with. But that's the same thing we see with the other animation directors that we cover, Phil Lord and Chris Miller. Right, they started off in television.
Yep.
And then eventually made a film that made their own got to pitch and make their own animated film to a studio. So
yeah, and it really hits the nail on the head with comedy.
Yeah,
I really feel like comedy is one of those things that we see it now more and more. Is if you kill it, then you people see that talent and they're like, man, that was funny. Mm-hmm. Like especially with animated, right? Mm-hmm. Because if I'm a child, I just don't care. But if I'm an adult, the thing that draws me into animation, animated movies, is the comedy, is the humor. I don't know if it's the same for you. Obviously, the story and all that. But for me, it's like I enjoy a movie more, and I know I'm watching a kids movie, if they have jokes that I can get and they don't get, right? That's Aladdin. That's all these Hercules, which I love. Like all these movies that have really funny moments that I understand and that maybe the kids are when I saw it I didn't really get.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff that obviously The Simpsons, right? Because The Simpsons is animated, directed towards adults, kind of. Mm-hmm. And when he gets his first start, his first feature animated film was The Iron Giant.
Yeah.
And The Iron Giant is a perfect example of a fusion of a story that can work incredibly well with children, but also adults can understand and captivate it and take in what he's trying to say in this movie. What is your first experience with Iron Giant, Mr. RB3?
Iron Giant, I remember watching like very young on TV. I think they used to show it on the C. Back then they used to call it WB, now they call it CW.
1999.
1999, yeah. So I didn't see it in theaters, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
1999, I was bored, bro. Like, stop it, RB3. We get it. You're young.
It's 2 years old. But the Iron Giant, man, that's one of the best animated films. I mean, I remember watching it as a kid and like loving it back then. Yeah. And you're right. It lands like on a certain level of like simplicity to where children have a very easy time like understanding what it's about and the themes behind it. But it also has an extra added layer of complexity for adults. This movie is very heavily about militarization, about about weaponry and the presence of weapons and the usage of weapons and how the Iron Giant is something that is essentially a giant weapon, a giant gun, a giant destroying robot, but still can have a heart within itself. And what is it like for the tool not to be the tool anymore and to be its own functioning being. So it's a very prominent film it has very prominent themes for an animated film to appeal to adults while also having a layer of simplicity for the kids too.
Sure.
So.
And a protagonist mainly that kids can kind of gravitate towards and be like, that's me.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, I feel that personally when I saw the movie, which was a while ago. But it's one of those things too. Like, let's talk a little bit more about those themes, which is a very, I mean, I guess it's still bold, and it was probably very bold back in 1999, but a very political and politicized storyline. What do you think of the storyline? And
right.
With the two sides that we get.
Right. I mean, it takes place in 1957, so it takes place in the height of like the Russian scare, the Red Scare, the fear of like nuclear invasion. So like this foreign being kind of landing and crash landing and representing a giant weapon is really a metaphor, I believe, of like the atomic era, as they used to call it, like the nuclear. The fear of nuclear annihilation and how a gigantic weapon could just take out people without any control. And I feel like that's what the Iron Giant represented in this. But yeah, it's very, it's particularly for a kid's film, for an animated film, it definitely addresses a lot of the perspective of the government, right? Like how they just kind of see it as, oh, we have to kill this thing because we have no idea what it is. While from the kid's perspective and from the Iron Giant's himself's perspective, he's actually building as his own, kind of person, his own character. And that's also could be something said about the whole evolution of like AI, artificial intelligence, and how they could develop into their own kind of people too. But I mean, but what do you think, Ace? Like when you like look at this movie, like
I mean you were gonna say what I was gonna say. I mean, Westworld. Look at Westworld now. Look at Ghost in the Shell. I mean,
still not caught up on Westworld.
Ghost in the Shell. The whole point of that movie and series was, especially series, if you guys are a fan of Standalone Complex like I am, which is one of my favorite, if not my favorite anime of all time, is literally like, are these artificially intelligent cyborgs, are they human? Like, are they people? Do they have souls? That's why it's called Ghost in the Shell. Because it's literally talking about what is a soul, and if these people have consciousness, if they have, feelings, and they have the same, for anyone who's a Westworld fan, like I watch Westworld religiously, if they have drives, and if they have programmed, humans have programs too, we have drives too, we are pretty much the same. And it's finding that basically Ghost in the Shell, right? It's finding that soul in our consciousness. And if they're conscious enough, are we killing people? Are we killing conscious beings? Have they become beings now that we're so aggressive towards because we see them as machines?
Right.
And that's the whole point of the movie, right? I mean, for me personally, at least with Vin Diesel playing
the Iron Giant,
which he does a great job. And obviously, as a massive, he's literally on my keychain, and we talked about him when we did the Batman episode, but as a massive Superman fan too, when he sees those symbols that inspire, he's inspired as well. And it's that symbolism of what it represents to help, and what it represents to sacrifice. And that's pretty much the whole purpose of Superman. And it's also the immigrant story, kind of like where he's coming from, right? Because that's where Superman is literally just about an immigrant coming into this world and helping the world that kind of rejects him. Right? So it's that kind of like mentality of like, this is the person who inspires me as well. And obviously they don't really get into that all the way, but that's kind of how I read into it, as far as like he can find inspiration in someone that's similar to him. No,
and I think I think that's perfectly what encompasses like a lot of like that blind like ideological optimism that is represented in Superman and represented in the Iron Giant in and of himself, like, or at least what the kid's trying to install in them, right? And it takes, and I find very interesting that the animation style, to me personally, kind of takes a lot from like a comic book kind of stylings. To me, when I watched this movie, I noticed a lot when I rewatched it. They do a lot of like camera moves where it'll go like up, then down, then back, or something like that, and it feels very much like a panel, right? Like, or a triangle kind of shape. And I think that's very interesting when it comes to Brad Bird's directing style. Like I said, make it very, very cinematic. When we're talking about the Iron Giant, though, the most recent portrayal of it came in the Ready Player One.
That's right.
That's
right.
Where we see, where we actually, there are some people who kind of don't like the idea of the Iron Giant being like this, being used in this movie as like the giant weaponized thing, where it kind of contradicts the message of the film itself. Do you have? I know
I was literally about to say. Yeah, I was gonna say the Iron Giant's in the movie, and I was gonna say, yeah, he literally didn't do anything except like destroy shit.
Right.
That was gonna be my response, because yeah, he kind of just was a weapon. He wasn't a character within itself. I mean, obviously, he was supposed to represent the friendship that I forget the people's names in the movies. But his friend and the other friend represented
H
and main character Parzival.
Yeah,
that's interesting. But when we saw the trailer, which was I believe Comic-Con last year, when we were there, we both kind of thought it was a very precarious decision to put the Iron Giant in there instead of other nostalgic stuff that they were going for.
Right.
But everyone, at least the people who saw the trailer, were like, Iron Giant, yo! And I was like, all right. Y'all are hyped for the Iron Giant? All right, cool.
Right.
It's just felt like a bizarre, reference that they were making in the movie.
We do have that whole 8-minute review of you ranting.
Dude, don't release that. I talked about Ready Player One because I got a lot of feedback on Twitter when I said I didn't like the movie and I thought it was a very irresponsible movie. And I have I have reasons for it.
Unfortunately, the cameras were rolling for that.
No, do not release that. I'm telling you, I've had enough of people on Twitter, and I didn't. I mean, Twitter guys, it literally you can only say few words. I'm not going to explain every minutia detail of what they're really trying to say or what they're expressing in this movie. So if I say I didn't like it and I name a few reasons, don't assume. Like a lot of people were like, you didn't like it 'cause it was unrealistic? It's a video game. And I'm like, no, the video game was realistic as hell. And I love everything outside of the video game. I was like, what am I watching? Mm-hmm. But I love the video game aspects of Ready Player One are so cool. Mm-hmm. They're awesome. The race scene was dope. The freaking Shining scene was awesome.
The scene was my favorite part.
thoroughly enjoyed those scenes. And then everything outside, I was like, kill me. But let's not get into that. But yeah, I really do feel like bringing in the Iron Giant was very much a bold choice, and Spielberg chose to do that too.
I think it's interesting too that it was a Spielberg using the Iron Giant, because I feel like the Iron Giant is also very inspired by like the Spielberg kind of movies, right? Particularly with the music. The music was done, I think, by, I don't know if it was John Williams or I think it was Michael Giacchino who collaborated.
Shout out to Giacchino, man. That guy does everything.
Yeah. But it feels very much like the operatic kind of old school Spielberg movie. So it's kind of nice seeing Spielberg kind of take what kind of the model that he instituted in a kind of way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that plays a huge part in the movie too. Is like the emotions you want to feel based on the music that's being played, right? Mm-hmm. That's the whole emotions being played throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. I'm still looking for the music by Michael Kamen.
My apologies, Michael Kamen, not Michael Giacchino. Michael Kamen.
Look at this guy.
Fantastic score with the.
Look at that IMDb picture, man. This guy is hype. This guy's clutch.
This guy's on edge, man.
But yeah, I mean, the music plays a huge part of this movie too. When it's expressing emotions, because it's the best way, especially when a kids movie. Mm-hmm. It's the best way to communicate to children how you're supposed to feel. I feel, and to everyone considering that. But yeah, it's an interesting movie. And what do you feel like overall? This, especially with the conclusion of the movie, what do you feel like the Brad Bird specifically was trying to say?
I feel like the overall theme of this is, getting to understand was unexplainable, or what you don't understand initially. And, for some reason, governments and institutions and all of these authoritative figures don't look upon the understanding that's necessary. And I always feel like that would, if, like when it comes to invasion movies, that's always the first reaction, right? We have to attack. That's what the government's first reaction was when they realized they had this thing on their hands, right? But when you understand that there's more to something than just being a tool or being violent or being a weapon, and when you're not on edge, when you're able to communicate, when you're able to find a method of communication to somebody or something that you don't understand, there will always be an understanding. I think that's what the whole relationship between the kid and the Iron Giant represented of himself, sure. And how that lack of understanding reflects what the government, particularly, I think choosing that time period was no accident. Particularly the events that were happening in the United States during that time, is not is outside of the military, right? There was still 1958 was very much a time of of segregation, of all of these things that was people look back on it as a nostalgic period, but really it's a lot of divide within it of itself too. So I feel like the understanding is a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's great. Let's move on to what we're doing is The Incredibles. Yeah, that's what we're doing this episode.
Incredibles 2 coming out.
The Incredibles 2
this
coming
week.
Out.
I'm super excited
this
for it.
This movie came out in 2004, Mr. RB3.
Yeah.
And with that, I ask you, were you alive in 2004?
Fortunately, I was alive in 2004, everybody. I was born. I actually very distinctly remember seeing this movie in theaters.
I was about to ask you that.
Yeah. This was very much one I remember seeing in theaters. And
were you like 5?
I was like 7.
7.
Yeah, I was 7.
Shit,
yeah.
Man. That's ridiculous.
This is the true definition of a kids movie.
You know what? This is off topic, but I'm gonna say it anyways. So the guy from we were talking about Hereditary, dude, his name is Alex Wolff, I think.
Yeah.
He's your age.
Oh yeah.
I looked it up. He looks like he's my age. But then I was like, 1997. What the frick? This guy's a child.
Yeah.
And he's playing a child in the movie, which is I always find it funny because they're usually like 30-year-olds.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm 17, but he's like 30. And he was like, I'm 17, but he's actually like 20, 21.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shit. That's crazy.
He was in the Schmodown recently.
That's right.
Too.
Yeah. Shout out to Alex, man. Obviously, I've never met him, but we. Oh no, you weren't there.
Yeah.
My bad. I saw him. He was right next to me in the Death Note premiere. With his brother. They're super close too.
Nate Wolff? Nate Wolff was in it, right?
Nate Wolff was in it, and his brother was like right next to me. So I got to see him there.
And then that should have been my seat, goddammit.
Sorry, man. I tried my hardest to get you in, bro. But it's okay, because you love that movie, RB3.
Oh, oof.
You love it.
It's actually probably the worst movie I've ever seen.
That's some harsh words, bro. Harsh words. And I personally didn't cater towards it. I didn't like it. I gave it a negative review, but people were like, F you, how come you didn't say it's the worst movie? You're not a real anime fan. And I was like, there's some good things in it. Because, Emma was like,
Emma hated it.
Yeah, Emma and I were going back. I was like, this is tough. But, anyways, shout out to children out there, RB3. Because he's a child. Even though he's about to
turn 21.
Turn 21, man.
21.
Yeah. Anyways,
so
back to The Incredibles.
I was literally 7 years old, so now I'm about to be 21 when I see this movie. Literally 3 times my age.
Holy shit. That's wild. Why does it take so long to make a sequel? Why did it take so long? And I talked about this on Movie Talk the one time I was on, and I said it. I was like, is this couldn't this be a beneficial thing? Is it possible? Look at Finding Dory. Finding Dory, it's not as long, but it's similar. It's similar as far as it's a very long time. It's not like the usual 2 year comes out a sequel. 2 year. No, this was like, I forgot how far Finding Dory was, but like you just said, this is ridiculous. And does that help? Does that help the box office? Because the people like you who are nostalgic about the first one, and then children,
new children,
combine those two, and it's like tons of money. Disney is genius for waiting this long. I don't know. I
don't know if it was intentional.
I don't know.
I mean, because the same thing with Monsters Inc. too. It was Monsters, and then what was it? 12 years later, Monsters University,
and Finding Dory too. Finding Dory, it took a while. I mean, it wasn't as long.
Toy Story 3 took.
Toy Story 3 is a perfect example of this. It's like I grew up with Toy Story. That was my animated movie back in 96, 97. That was me. And then Toy Story 3 comes out, and I'm like, older, and I'm like, man, I want to watch this movie. And then it makes a ton of money, and people love it. So,
Wait a minute, Ace. I think we've cracked something. So Toy Story 2 came out in 1999. Toy Story 3 came out in 2010. 11-year difference. Monsters Inc. came out in 2001. Monsters University 2013. 12-year difference. Finding Dory 2003. Finding Nemo 2003. Finding Dory 2016. 13 years. Incredibles 2. 14 years.
And all the tracking is like, this movie is gonna make money,
Right.
like buckets.
Right.
Is that I literally said this. I pitched that to the people. I said, is this an actual strategy? Can it be a box office strategy?
Just pushing it back a year and year each.
Because it's working, man. I mean, it's working, right?
Yeah.
Look at the movies you just named; those made money.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So that's the new game, people. We gotta predict the next Pixar sequel will be 15 years off. From the original.
Because think about it, man. Everyone's like, why don't they make it? Come on, make another one. And then like 13 years passes by and they're like, we want to watch it so bad.
Yeah.
Hey, man, you get people desperate enough, you drown them without any water, and then they get real thirsty, man. They're like, oh, please give me the movie now.
Yeah.
So, now I have kids. Anyways, The Incredibles. What was your thoughts as a child watching this movie?
Dude, I love this movie.
Even more child than you were.
Even more of a child than I am now. Yeah, about to be 21 though.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
Children. Jesus.
So
21.
21 is I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna take my first sip of alcohol on the show next week. Next week.
That's hysterical. Because I don't even.
You don't even drink.
I don't drink.
Yeah.
So I don't drink. So I just think it's funny how 21 now.
I'm ready to get ready. You know what I mean?
When I turned 21 RB3, I sat by myself and watched the movie. That's what I did. And you have to do the same. Otherwise, you're not allowed.
Yeah, man. That's how it goes. But
you loved this movie as a kid.
I loved Incredibles, and I think this is probably the thing that set me on the pathway of like loving superhero just stuff in general.
Sure.
Because it was so like fun and lively. For a kid, a lot of Pixar movies can get kind of drowned in the like message, like particularly towards the end. I remember when I was a kid and watching, I think it was like Bug's Life, and I remember distinctly like the point where it stopped being a movie and started being a message. Sure. As a child, I kind of detected that.
Okay.
But for me, Incredibles, it was both like throughout the entire time, and again, that's Brad Bird just being like the genius that he is, able to weave in a consistent through line, a consistent message, and a consistent theme of marriage and the troubles of family within this grandiose superhero adventure, and somehow make those two relate in a very creative way. So like, I definitely loved this movie as a kid, and as an adult, I love it even more.
I was going to ask that. Rewatching it, what do you take out of it more?
Well, as an adult, I mean, you definitely start to understand each character and how their power is like a representation of what each character is feeling, right? Like, Mr. Incredible is like this strong, buff man that has nothing much else to him. That's his physique is what carries him through. Elastigirl is like literally, straining yourself, stretching yourself out. Providing for everybody, right? Being the womanly figures, particularly. I mean, this film is another thing that takes place in like the 1950s as well.
I was gonna say womanly figure.
Figure, yeah. She's thick with 2 C's. Thick.
And then obviously, Invisible Girl?
Violet. And her whole insecurities, right? Not wanting to be seen, and wanting to protect herself, wanting to shield herself off, and of course, Jack being the fast, being a kid, growing up, like wanting to move fast, wanting to be everywhere, wanting to be, so as an adult, I pick up on those things a lot more, and I'm like, damn, that's really cold, you know what I mean? Like, because like as a kid you don't realize that, but as you grow up you start to understand each character just a little bit more. I feel like if you watch it as I'm probably like 20-30 years from now, I'm going to watch it again and somehow find something new with Bob and Helen and stuff like that too.
That's a good point, yeah.
So I mean, it's just something that relates to like everybody and all ages and all families, but it has something to say for everybody too. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are definitely themes in there. I also I'm specifically the villain too. Oh, yeah. I want to talk about him a little bit more, and how bitterness can be kind of lead to villainy, right? Because that's essentially what it was, as far as his rejection that he felt leads to, and his bitterness that he felt throughout the rejection and throughout the rest of his life, leads to him literally making it his own vendetta to take it to him after being rejected.
I literally kill all superheroes
Yeah.
because he couldn't be one.
Because and it's that rejection that he feels is like the instigation that he feels to do what he does, which is evil.
Right.
So what do you feel about that as far as like, especially nowadays? That's what we see a lot of.
I mean, we see a lot of people who feel like they need to be vindicated and feel like they need to have, stand on some sort of, rooftop and have their, message or whatever. And for him, trying to adopt this superhero mentality, something that he's not, really speaks to how much we idolize our heroes and how much we want to be our heroes, and coming and not being able to come to the grips of understanding that our heroes are people too. They have flaws too. Mr. Incredible is not a perfect dude. He's not going to treat, this random kid that he met like that night, when they show the flashback. He's not just gonna automatically think, oh, I should treat everybody good. I mean, he's a hero. I mean, for him, he's probably the most egotistical guy, whatever, you know what I mean? So he probably has the biggest ego in the world. So he's not gonna talk to some kid, and that's gonna scar somebody.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a stretch. Get it? But what's his face? Paperboy, Atlanta.
Yeah.
The kind of idea of like, if someone comes up to me, come on, dude, I'm a person too. Like, I just want to live my own life. But at the same time, it's like, all right, let's do it. I have to be the persona. I have to be Paperboy in front of everyone else. And it's him realizing the duality between having a face and having, being yourself at the same time, which is the most real thing you can ever hear on this podcast when it comes to living in LA. Because you find out real quick. I'm like, that's not a real person. Okay, cool. I guess Twitter's not real. Because you see even people who are not even famous, especially people who are not famous, you see like, damn, that's not what I expected. But because they want to succeed. So they put on a persona, they put on a face. But yeah, I just thought of Paperboy, how he realized, he's like, dude, leave me alone. I just want to live my life, man. And that's kind of how what Mr. Incredible was too. And obviously his ego enforces that even more.
Right.
But at the same time, it can kind of get annoying hearing so many people be like, Mr. Incredible. I'm like, oh, I get it, man. I just want to chill, fam. Like that's kind of his reaction. And it turns out to be, the spark that started his villain, basically. So
Right. And of course, I mean, to me, I always relate it back to, I don't relate it back. I think Iron Man 3 kind of stole the whole idea of that whole plot twist, right? Of like the guy who wants to be him, but then ultimately turns against him and stuff.
Oh my God, that's so true.
Yeah. So, but it's just funny. I mean, that's what I related to too. But, definitely Syndrome represents like of course, when we're talking about like celebrity too, right? A lot of celebrities have to deal with people like that in like the real world, stalkers, people who are obsessed, you know what I mean? Like,
you don't want to feel bad for a celebrity because they're a celebrity, but at the same time, you're like, I kind of feel bad for that celebrity.
Yeah. I mean, we see the whole thing with Kelly Marie Tran this week. I mean, she had to delete her Instagram because people were just like fucking with her too much.
And sometimes it can be too much. I mean, the same thing. I keep going back to this because I miss her so bad. Daisy Ridley. Same thing happened with Daisy. I mean, she put like one thing that people didn't agree with on her Twitter, and she got ripped apart. And I remember because I was her most devout follower, and I'm not lying about that. I would talk about her Instagram all the time, and I'm like, Mom, look what Daisy posted. Like, isn't she great? Like that was me. So when she left Twitter, it broke my heart. I mean, Instagram, it broke my heart. But yeah, same thing.
Yeah,
same thing. It's just too much. Just a little too much, and especially for a female woman. I feel like it's way worse, and I've seen people's comments, people that I know that are in the industry and stuff, and they show me the comments, and I was like, yo, that's too much. Like I would probably be off Instagram too.
Right. Yeah. And then of course this movie kind of deals with the whole idea of femininity to a certain extent, right? Sure. When you're talking early on in the film, Elastigirl has that whole interview where she's talking about, oh, should I leave all the superheroing to the men, all that kind of stuff, and then I think in Incredibles 2 they're going to explore that a lot more, just based on the way it looks in the trailers. But I like the fact that Incredibles 1 is kind of about the destruction of the patriarchy, and how when you take away the main source of providing for this dude, for Mr. Incredible, he kind of loses his purpose, right? He kind of dives into like this midlife crisis of just hating everything. and has to go back and rekindle his youth to find his way back to who he was before, which I think is super fascinating.
Yeah, what do you think about the whole government aspect of this movie and making heroism okay and kind of stuff? It's funny because I'm religious about My Hero Academia. Like I'm obsessed with My Hero Academia, so it's so similar, man. I'm telling you, it's so similar.
I've been wanting to catch up on
it's it's almost the same thing.
Okay.
Where it's like the heroes have a community and then they have superpowers, and it's interesting, pues. Pero I just spoke in Spanish. But my thing is what do you think they're going for as far as, I mean, living in this society, this fake society, what would it be like, kind of thing? So what do you think of that as far as the...
Right. I mean, and I think that's important because, when a lot of people think of this film, they think of it as like kind of inspired by Fantastic Four because of the whole family element. But I always thought of it kind of like a Watchmen influence too, right? Because the whole conversation is who watches the Watchmen, who watches these superhero characters, and up to what point is superheroing a duty. And I think that's an incredible first mission that they have. Not mission, but the first thing you see in this movie is Mr. Fantastic saving somebody, or Mr. Fantastic, Mr. Incredible saving somebody from a suicide attempt. And like that raises a very interesting moral question. Like if somebody chooses to take their own life, who is it for a superhero or for anybody to come in the way of that?
Sure.
Or if that should even be a choice to begin with, for the person who's committing. It's a very like touchy thing, and that would I think that would probably cause a big conversation of like what's the role of a superhero in society. So it's a very fascinating question.
And that's, for me, it's All-Star Superman. That scene in All-Star Superman, in that moment, if you've read All-Star Superman, it's literally Superman does the same thing.
Right.
Superman does the exact same thing. Right. But yeah, that's interesting, right? What makes you a hero, as far as, and also physical strength, right?
Right.
As far as like,
because he ended up breaking the guy's arm.
Exactly.
He saved
I
him.
can punch things, and it's like, well, now help this guy, and it's like you said, break the guy's arm. It's like, oops. Yeah. So that's interesting for sure.
So I thought that's super fascinating how they approach that subject matter, and how that chain of reactions ultimately ends up like dominoing into like just the complete like outlaw of superheroes, and how that prompts like this new underbelly, this new whole kind of thing where if you want to be a superhero, you kind of have to end up breaking the law to save people, right? Like that scene where they break into the building to stop or to save people from a fire, like how that has to become like a criminal mission for them, like. So I don't know. I just thought that was, it's just crazy how that whole dynamic of like being the superhero but also not being viewed positively in the eye of the law kind of works for these people.
Sure. I have one more question for you. Is this a superhero movie?
It's definitely a superhero movie. Definitely. I don't know. I think
you're not Josh McCouga?
Yeah, I think what.
Shout out, yo! I gotta tell you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I told you this off camera. But we were at Riley's birthday. Shout out to Riley's birthday.
Yeah.
And Josh McCouga, I saw Josh, and I saw him in the bathroom, and he was like, "Yo," and he was talking to something. But he told me he listened to this show.
Hey.
He's like, "Hey, I listened to the Meaning of podcast," and I'm like, "You listen to it? You must be the only one, because no one listens to this."
Yeah.
But so shout out to Josh McCouga, and now we're gonna throw you under the bus, bro. Because you didn't say this was a superhero. Yeah. You were like adamant, this is not a superhero movie. But yeah, it's a superhero movie.
But what's interesting, and I was watching a video essay kind of talking about it, how it's also kind of a spy film, like in and of itself too, right? Like with the crazy cars,
sure.
The aesthetic of it kind of takes from like those old James Bond movies and stuff like that, and the music too. Like I don't know, it's very much it's a superhero spy film, but also a family film, but also a movie about marriage.
Yep.
And like
it's a lot.
It's a lot. But it's very clever. And I love how at the end where when we finally meet Jack and we finally see his powers, and how each power is kind of a reflection of each person's like individual personality.
Sure.
How Jack being a baby is just him going through a bunch of different like emotions and like changing shapes and stuff.
Yeah.
But then I just think that's so fascinating. But yeah, whereas it's a superhero film in the sense that it deals with superheroes and deals with people who have superpowers is very much a film about consequences and about family. And to me, that really got highlighted where they have that whole scene in the movie where Mr. Incredible is like in the laboratory on the giant computer, and he's seeing like all of his friends dying, and it cross cuts that with the scene of like Helen like talking, like looking on the tracker on his suit and like seeing that he's like somewhere else, and it's like that whole question of is he cheating or not, like, and it's like they're like circumstances, they're like literally circumstances of like superheroes dying, and it's also like matched with the whole idea of like your husband cheating and how those stakes are like equal, you know what I mean? Like it's just so fascinating to me, like how they built that whole storyline together.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's definitely a great movie, and it has a lot inside that movie, which is great. And it also was, a lot of people say it was inspired by Fantastic Four. I disagree. I think it was inspired by the great Disney Channel original movie, Up, Up, and Away. Shout out to Up. Did you see that movie?
Yeah.
I love that movie, bro. I've seen every single Disney Channel original movie, and I love them all.
Yo, what was the Disney movie that was Sky High that came out after this?
That's right.
Yeah.
Sky High. Yeah. See, by the time Sky High came out, I was like, I'm not seeing that shit.
Oh man, I remember Sky High.
Yeah, but you were 12.
Yeah, that's true. So, the Sky High was the shit though, man.
Yeah, but that was Up, Up, and Away too.
Yeah,
it's the same thing, man.
Yeah, same superhero family type deal.
Superhero family, getting powers, all that. It's the same thing, man. Shout out to Up, Up, and Away, man. That was a good movie. Let's move on to Ratatouille, which is another movie that a lot of people love. This movie, another Pixar movie. What do you think of this one overall? And do you remember watching this one, Mr. RB3, for the first time?
I remember watching this one 2007. I was 10 years old.
Every time, man, you're gonna get me mad.
I was in theaters. I actually saw this. This is actually the first movie I saw at the El Capitan Theater as a kid.
I guess,
yeah, we went I was at some summer camp and we went on a field trip there. It was kind of weird. But I love Ratatouille, man. I've always liked Ratatouille. It's probably the most. I feel like that's the most adult film that Pixar's ever made.
Ooh, interesting. Tell me why.
I don't know. I feel like it deals with very like adult themes, right? Or maybe not adult themes per se, but like themes that like, like themes of like leave, like you have to like leave the nest. You know what I mean? You have to like break out of what you identify as and what your identity is, and just be your own person. I feel like that's very adult and it's very complex to a certain extent, right? Like what defines you from an identity perspective doesn't have to define you personally, just because, he's a rat, just because Remy, is that Remy? Is this name?
I think so.
I think Remy's the rat. Or is it a mouse or rat? It's a rat.
It's a rat, yeah.
Yeah. You don't have like rats don't have to eat the food. They can make the food. They can cook the food, and it's, I think that's a very strong message. I feel like that relays like wider than, that's a pretty big message, I feel like, for a kids movie.
Sure. So, and it's voiced by Patton Oswalt.
Shout out to
Patton. Regular on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Shout out to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. again.
Is he on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
Yeah, he was on a few episodes for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, that's a great point. It's the whole concept of like be who you are kind of thing. Be what you are instead of not who you are, but be what you are, and going against that kind of thing, and accepting your interests, but also accepting your talent, right? Because what if he sucked?
right.
But he's not. He's amazing.
He's
right?
nice with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like if he sucked, they'd be like, bro, go back to being a rat, bro.
right.
But the fact that he's great also kind of plays a hand into this movie, considering that, keep doing what you're doing because you're dope, and you love doing it. So I mean, what do you think it says about that as well?
I mean, I think that's a great point. Yeah. The talent. I think it's really a statement towards being an artist too, right? Like being an artist, exploring your creativity when not necessarily the people around you want to do that. I mean, I remember for me personally, that was for me going into film, right? Because initially my family wanted me to be like in engineering and math and science, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
never
I mean,
that.
It's the same with me too.
Yeah,
it's the same with everyone. Who's
I think a lot of people. I think that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then but this movie is about overcoming that,
sure,
and defying that, and being and growing into your own talents and finding yourself. And I think that's even more prominent when you take into consideration this movie from the perspective of the critic, right? The critic in this movie, and some people say this really is a movie about like criticism and stuff like that.
Birdman,
yeah, I think
Birdman of Pixar movies.
Right.
No, yeah.
But I just think, yeah, I mean that's and when you look at this movie from the perspective of the critic, right? It's like, oh, this film is about trying to recapture your childhood and what makes you love what you love too.
Nostalgia.
Exactly.
Which is what we're seeing now, bro.
How you have to kind of pander to nostalgia to make critics feel good and stuff like that too. I don't know if that's necessarily like the intent, but I think that's part of it, right? Like, I think for any critics, I think nostalgia aside, what really like makes things hit for people are if they can relate to what makes them love what they love. For the critic in this movie, when he takes a bite of ratatouille, he's like, oh, this is first time since my childhood that I felt this way. And I think for a lot of film, for a lot of film critics, for example, per se, when they watch a certain movie and they say, oh, this movie reminds me of me when I was a child, I think that holds a lot of water for people.
Yeah, I mean, it makes them, like I explained this during Infinity War when we talked about it. Mm-hmm. It really is like what it makes you feel. Mm. Like that's part of what I feel greatness of the movie, and what I feel if you didn't enjoy the movie. I mean, because that's what it is too, and to not acknowledge that is very. It's very problematic. I mean, I acknowledge that some of the reasons why I enjoy this movie, and most critics do. I mean, I heard a few reviews. I listened to the Ringer podcast, and I heard their reviews kind of talk about that as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, that's an interesting perspective as far as saying this movie's about criticism and critics and film criticism, in my opinion, because that's what we're experiencing now. Yesterday, a report came out for Variety talking about what is the majority of film critics, and they said it's like 88% old white guy.
Really?
Wow. And it's 22% female, and then don't even get into WOC or POC, person of color, woman of color. Mm-hmm. It's like super low. And that, to me, personally, I've talked about this a lot, but that's personally something that should not be the case. And they said that the movies themselves that they're talking about are more diverse than the people who criticize the movies.
Wow.
People who are film critics. That, to me, is incredibly powerful. It's on Variety if anyone wants to check it out. But that is so important because it's also about perspective, right? What is your perspective going into this version of art? What is your perspective when it comes to trying out this food, right? What if I didn't have the same way he grew up or didn't have the financial income to try this kind of food? Then you probably wouldn't try that kind of food, right? But what if I get someone who has the same talent, but is much younger or a different race or comes from a different background? Background is so key when it comes to enjoying something that you love. Background is key, whether it comes to food or film or art. That's key because you might not enjoy art from a different perspective. Obviously know what it is you're talking about. Obviously don't just be like, well, I don't know who I am and I don't know this art, but I'm going to criticize it. It's like, no, know it, learn it, but bring in a different perspective. It's always what I've felt because I feel like that's incredibly important. And that's my end of my rant for Ratatouille. But that's such a great scene. It's the scene that everyone goes back to.
Right.
It's the critic criticizing the food. That's a very good point.
Right. But this movie is about so much, and I think the whole idea of having the polar opposite of what you perceive as somebody who could be a chef, right? Like the rat cooking the food.
I was just about to say that, man. That's kind of the expression in the movie is like, ask any chef, ask anybody who owns a kitchen, or the rat is like literally the scary thing. It's the anti-sanitation, food, anti-restaurant, anti-enjoying your food kind of thing. Right. It's like the representation of what a rat means for that.
And that scene at the end when they walk into the kitchen, you just see all those rats just hanging out. Hey, man, that would scare the shit out of me.
I was going to say, I would be like, oh my God, this is the devil. This is Satan. Because, that's the even if you saw one rat, I'd be like, oh my God, hell no. and kill it right away. I would kill Remy on the spot.
You kill Remy?
Step on his head.
What if it was one of those New York rats? Them motherfuckers that are like this.
Oh my god! Don't even get me started on that, man. But yeah, you can continue with your point because I interrupted you.
No. I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's just fascinating how you look at what makes you how the view of rats and how the view of chefs are so radically different, but when those worlds come together, it actually comes together for something kind of magical. So
sure,
never judge a book by its cover.
Yep, perspective, man. It's all about perspective. Yeah, I mean, think about what if that rat just likes your food, bro? Just let it chomp on it.
Yeah.
Help out nature. But no, it's.
Except if you're in New York, stop leaving shit around New York.
Come on, man. Come on, stop that.
Like I live in New York. Never actually been in New York. So.
I have been in New York. Shout out to New York City, man. Shout out to our New York fans.
New York listeners, comment down below.
Sorry about that.
NYC. Brooklyn.
No, nobody. Nobody listens to the show. Anyways, I mean, that's a very interesting point. That's kind of what gets you into the movie for sure. Yeah. Any other words you want to speak of this? You said is it your favorite?
This is not my favorite.
Okay.
It's probably, to me, I consider like the most adult Pixar movie. But Incredibles is probably going to be my favorite, one of my favorite Pixar, if not my favorite Pixar movie.
Yeah, because we talked about our favorites on the Pixar episode. If you want to hear more about Pixar, check that episode out. But I forgot what yours was, and I forgot what mine was too.
Yeah, I forgot mine too. Yeah.
Let's move on to live action.
Yeah, making that transition that I remember when this news was coming out, that Brad Bird, director of Incredibles and Ratatouille, is going to be directing the next Mission Impossible movie. The reaction, surprisingly enough, was mainly positive, at least what I recall from it. But yeah, this is an enormous movie to jump into. Mm-hmm. Like, when it comes to budget. It's massive. Mm-hmm. And he did Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, which might be my favorite Mission Impossible movie. Ooh, okay.
I love this. I like this movie more than let me see if this is the right one I'm thinking of.
This is the one where he's hanging off the side of the building.
Yes, I like this one more than the last one.
Ghost Protocol?
Yeah, no, this is Ghost Protocol.
Oh, I'm sorry. The last one was Rogue Nation.
Rogue Nation. I like this one more than Rogue Nation. I know a lot of people were like, "Yo, Rogue Nation's the best one," and I'm like, "Ghost Protocol." I think Ghost Protocol is way cooler.
Yeah. I like Rogue Nation more personally.
Yeah,
I feel this has the better scene though. This has the better scene.
Right?
Yeah.
That scene provoked me in the theater. Yeah. Like, I literally was like nothing made me feel that way. Mm-hmm. Like, hanging out, and I saw I just recently we watched Hereditary, and they played the Mission Impossible trailer for the new one that's coming out. I forget the name of it.
I can't remember the name.
Fallout.
Oh, Fallen Kingdom.
Fallen Kingdom. That's Jurassic World.
Oh man, my bad.
But I saw the trailer, and it literally thought the same thing. I said to myself in my head, I was like, I don't think anything can top that building scene. Mm-hmm. Nothing. You could literally do whatever you can jump out, because he's jumping out of a plane in the trailer. He's doing a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, bro, throw everything at me. That scene is incredible. Mm-hmm. That scene in Ghost Protocol when he's hanging off that I think it's Dubai building, just killed me. I was like, kill me, man. But that's obviously one scene in the movie, but that's kind of one of the points of these movies.
Right, to have those scenes, is
to create those super intense, incredible, greatest of all time action scenes that can stand the test of time as being like, this is why I'm coming here, so I can see this movie. Right. But what do you think of this movie overall, and as far as inside the Mission Impossible franchise, like where it stands?
Right. I mean, I love this movie, and I think part of why I really love it is because this one, to me, I mean, of course, the Mission Impossible movies are supposed to be like Ethan Hunt and his team, you know. But this was the first time I watched it and actually kind of felt like this was a real team together, with Jeremy Renner. And of course, I think the original plan was for Jeremy Renner to take over the franchise, right?
Yeah.
And they set it up that way.
Or I think wasn't that Bourne Supremacy?
Oh, it was one of those. I don't know. He had plans. He had a lot of plans. Never worked out. But it was just for this one though. This one finally felt like this is a team of people who are like really working together and really gelled together like really well. Paula Patton is in this.
That's right.
Simon
Shout out
Pegg.
to Paula Patton, man.
This is the first time we see Simon Pegg and Jeremy Renner, who stay in the franchise, of course. Paula Patton never came back for some reason.
No, she didn't know.
But
making it a Bond.
yeah,
New girl every time.
yeah. I mean, Jesus. I like
no, but the new girl, what's her name? Rebecca something.
Rebecca Ferguson.
Yeah, she comes back.
Amazing.
In this one.
So for me, the team felt like it was there. The action scenes were like all really good. I mean, obviously the Dubai thing on the building, but then also immediately followed with the storm, like when they were with the sandstorm, right? Like
the sandstorm. I was gonna say this one has the underwater one too, right? That was Rogue Nation.
Rogue Nation, yeah. But this one,
because I was gonna say that underwater thing killed me too.
The underwater one was the scene for me, I was like, oh. We're not talking about Rogue Nation, but
sure.
The two things I love in Rogue Nation are one, the underwater scene. And no, I love three things in that movie. I'm sorry. The underwater scene, the opera scene. You remember the opera scene?
Yeah, that was cool.
That shit blew my mind.
Yeah.
And then the motorcycle chase, like after the water scene.
That was the one I was lukewarm on. I was like, this is cool, but it's just more.
Yeah, I don't know, bro. Literally, the only reason I love that scene is because you see Tom Cruise riding the motorcycle, and like literally, like his knee touches the asphalt, bro. If you're a real motorcycle thing and your knee touches the shit, like you're almost like guaranteed like dead. You know what I mean?
Dead.
Like,
yeah. Your leg just goes like that. It flies off.
I just love seeing one shot of this. This could have been the take that Tom Cruise almost died. That's crazy. But this one had that great scene in the Russian in the Kremlin.
Yep.
Yeah. You remember that scene where he like has the invisible shield in front of him or whatever?
Yeah.
Like, oh man. So this one has a lot of classic.
I was gonna say this one's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, this one's great, and then I like the villain in this.
Yeah.
This guy, I mean, I don't really know his like motivation and stuff, but like he has a cool. I love that also scene where they're like. When they're fighting in like the star, and I'm sorry, the car garage.
Yeah,
and
the
like,
car garage
scene's
keep
pretty
popping.
cool. Yeah,
I saw this movie in IMAX.
I saw it in IMAX too.
I think this was my first movie that I've seen in IMAX, because most IMAX, for anyone who doesn't know, if you live in LA, most IMAX in LA, I think there's only one that doesn't. Most IMAX is IMAX plus 3D. And I don't do 3D movies. Right. I'm very religious on that sense. But this one was IMAX, just IMAX, no 3D, because it was shot in.
They shot the tower scene in IMAX.
That's right. So, and I remember going to watch this with my cousin who was in town, and we were both like interested in seeing the IMAX version, because IMAX is a lot of money.
Right.
For anyone who pays that IMAX ticket, you're like, damn, this is too much money, man. But let's do it. I guess you're in town.
Right.
But yeah, I saw this one in IMAX, and that's why I think part of the reason why I was like my breath was taken away. Also, because I'm afraid of heights, so that doesn't help. And also holding my breath for Rogue Nation is like a big thing for me. So it's like a combination of the reason why I feel what I feel watching these scenes. But I thought this movie had crazy stunts too. Like you said, the garage scene was crazy. Yeah. It was pretty intense.
Right. I mean, they had a lot of great stunts. They had a lot of great character moments.
I was gonna say Simon Pegg is one of my. I love Simon Pegg in this movie for sure. Ghost Protocol. I think he really meshed well with the group.
Oh, dude, perfectly. Yeah. And I think they needed that balance of like the comedic relief with the super serious like Jeremy Renner dude.
Yeah.
So it really worked out. I also love that scene where they like crash like in the car and like they end up underwater and that like when they I guess. They were coming from something like I think am I thinking the Ghost Protocol?
I don't know.
When the car like ends up like crashing over the river and like and it's like that one shot from inside of the car where you see everything flipping around but it's just static or whatever.
Oh, I think that's Rogue Nation. I think so. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let us know in the comments down below. Everyone's
below.
screaming at us. How can you not know?
Yeah, we don't know. They all kind of blend together.
I was going to say, we've talked for 5 minutes about Ghost Protocol, and we haven't talked about anything story-wise. We've talked about all stunts. You're like, that no stunt, though. Yo!
I mean, that's what these movies are for.
I was going to say, that's kind of what it's for.
Yeah.
Like, watching the Fallout trailer, I was like, I just want to see it so I can see the crazy stunt.
Yeah.
But they're making it a story, and like the CIA is hunting down, played by Henry Cavill, and I'm like, all right. I mean, cool. I want to see Henry Cavill kick ass. Personally, we're gonna see. I've been very passionate, and you know this about Stashgate. Shout out to Stashgate. Hashtag Stashgate. It's real. Stashgate is real. Remember, I was obsessed with it because I'm like, how can you have this studio, to me, it's the funniest story in Hollywood in recent memories, as far as like you cannot shave Superman's mustache, but it's like it's Superman. No, it ruined Justice League. Like one of the things that ruined Justice League. Like you can't ignore it. You just can't.
I always thought it was easy. I thought it was just so stupid. It's easier to add a mustache.
It's so much easier
to take one away. Like,
oh my god! I still love that sketch that I think Makuga made.
For Collider.
I thought that was awesome. I thought it was awesome, and it's underhyped, underrated.
Underrated.
Stupid. I thought it was underrated because I was like, that's so funny.
Yeah.
It's so true. They're like, I forget who it is. Like Tom is playing. The guy. He's like, oh yeah, how much did? Oh, he's like, we. It cost us like $300 million to remove that mustache. It's like, how much would it cost if it were like, I don't know, 40 grand to give him a mustache? Yeah. And Josh McCook like, yeah, I do this shit all the time. This is my job. I'm a mustache man. I just give people fake mustaches and it looks really real. And he showed him. Yeah. I was like, that's so true. You could have just given him a mustache. And it's, I don't know, dude. I love that sketch. And freaking Copster takes my name in that movie too. His fake name is my really? Oh, yeah. But yeah, that's kind of my thought process going into Fallout. I'm watching it only for a Henry Cavill mustache. This is real, man. I literally posted on Twitter. I posted on Twitter of the poster that he has with the giant machine gun, with the super crazy minigun, and I posted "Release the stash," and it's Henry Cavill going in his mustaches. I'm hyped for that mustache, bro. Yeah. This is a $40 million mustache, bro.
This is the mustache that tanked the DC cinematic.
This is the mustache that destroyed WB. This is hype, man. I'm hyped for it.
Yeah, man.
Paramount. Shout out to Paramount.
One hell of a mustache. I'm telling you. Mustache
people stop listening. They're like, man, these guys are stupid. Fast forward.
Also, I do gotta admit though, I love that Fallout trailer because there's one point in that trailer where like Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise are fighting in the bathroom, and like they literally add a gun. They add a gun sound effect when he's like pumping his arms. He like goes, I'm just like, yo.
He's like, yo, it's about to be lit, bro. Henry Cavill and his giant biceps and his mustache is gonna take you out, man. Yeah. I can't lie. Watching that trailer, I'm like, yo, I kind of want to see Henry Cavill kick Tom Cruise's ass, man. Mm-hmm. I don't know. That's me personally. Shout out to the CIA. Anyways.
Well, you know what? There is one thing in this movie that I mean, the nuclear rush codes is not really important. That's the main object of it. I think
that's right. It is.
I think what is interesting in this movie is the whole idea of like, was it MI6? MI6, yeah. How that kind of deteriorates. Because of like foreign agents, I don't know. Sure. I'm stretching here, people. I'm reaching.
I mean, to be fair, there is starting with this movie. I feel personally, and then Rogue Nation, and then obviously in Fallout, based on the trailer, we are going to have some politicized stories as far as like,
because I feel like Rogue Nation was more politicized than this one.
Sure,
but this was more about the fallout of the lack of a better word, no pun intended.
I was gonna say that's the next one though. But
the deterioration of this
of the agency
organization. Yeah.
True, and I feel like they do have these kind of interesting messages as far as like who's the good guy? Is it the government? Is it what if the government's telling you to do something that's irresponsible and morally incorrect, which I feel personally that should be a bigger question as far as what's going on even now, as far as issues that become politicized when they should be moral issues. When it's a simple like, well, that's the right's not gonna like it or the right loves that, and I'm like, well, since when is the right accepting stuff that they've rejected years ago, like 2 years ago, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we got to do it because we're the right extreme now, and it's like, I feel like there should be a moral equivalency of what you're doing, and there should be accountability on what the government is deciding to do on a moral level, not just a political level. And things that become politicized is so upsets me, and I've talked about this quite a lot on this show, that there's some things that it's like, no, that's not a political issue, that's just a basic human rights issue. Right. Like I've talked about race before, and I hate how race has become, it's this thing where it's like, well, if you're this, then you're that, and if it's racially, and I'm like, no, that's race is everyone should learn to accept everyone. That's humanity. We're humanity, and it's become very much like, well, if you speak Spanish, then F you. And it's like, really?
Right.
Like, we've seen that. Like, in recent, even the guy from New York who was like, really? Like, this is what we're going for.
Right.
And that's the end of my spiel for that. But I do feel like these movies are kind of saying that, especially with the upcoming trailer for the next one.
Yeah.
Talking about, like, what is right, what is incorrect. So, there you go. The meaning of Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible. Now, I think the next movie we're going to talk about does have a lot of meaning.
Yes, it does.
This is a movie
a movie, a Disney movie. Shout out to Disney movies like Wrinkle in Time doing poorly.
Original Disney
This
movie.
is original Disney movie, and original, personally, disappointing Disney movie.
Oh.
Shout out to Ava DuVernay. This one was another one that I sat alone in a theater to watch this movie, and I think it was like a 5:00 screening or something because there was a bunch of kids with me.
Wow.
And it was hard to watch with kids. But Tomorrowland, Mr. RB3. I expressed my opinions already, but what is your opinion on this movie?
I gotta be honest, I have not seen this one.
Oh,
I have not seen
shit!
this one.
Leave my house, RB3. How can you be on this podcast and not see the movie, bro? This movie. Okay, so do you know the premise of the movie?
Yeah, no, yeah.
So basically, when it comes to IPs in Disney, man, Disney's funny. Disney, when it comes to theme park IPs, I mean, that's Pirates of the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thought process behind this movie. Is saying
Haunted Mansion,
theme park IPs, bro. I'm telling you, and all these movies take from that because they're free, and then they make a story off it. Jungle Cruise, coming up with The Rock, right? That's still in production, right?
Right.
It's going to be. I don't know, but Disney says, "Hey, we have this IP. Let's just make a movie out of it," kind of thing. And then they get writers to kind of build a story around it. That was Tomorrowland. Unfortunately, in my personal opinion, I feel like it felt so flat. Like, so flat. Like, there's so many things that happen in this movie that don't hit. I mean, shout out to George Clooney. George Clooney and Hugh Laurie,
yeah.
That, I mean, they dominate the screen, but I feel like, when it comes to the kids in this movie, it just doesn't work.
The main actress being Brett, I can't remember her last name. She was in that movie Mr. Church with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, she's good. I mean, I don't want to say that the acting's bad in any sense. I just felt like motivation scenes, like, this movie goes for something when it comes to being motivational, and goes for a storyline that seems to be relevant, but it just turns into a cartoon fest kind of thing. It feels like a very poorly not directed, but a poorly written comedy. Like, the comedy moments just don't hit for this movie. The emotional moments fall so flat for me personally. Yeah, it didn't work for me quite a bit, but shout out to, I think he was in the movie, Keegan-Michael Key.
Really? Okay, he's in this.
He's in it for one scene, and it just doesn't work. Yeah, man. I gotta ask you, Mr. RB3. Everything takes a decision. So why did you not see this movie, man?
Well, I mean, honestly, I just didn't I didn't find any interest in it. I mean, I like Brad Bird, but then, like, the reviews came out pretty lame. I also been to Disneyland a couple times. I didn't really know how they can make an area, a movie, that. But I was very interested in seeing it. The main reason I wanted to see it is mainly because I thought it was fascinating that this is the one science fiction movie that takes place in the future that represents a more utopian society as opposed to a dystopian, right? A more uplifting. I mean, I don't know. Is it time travel, or what is it like? Is it alternate?
Yeah, it is. Man, it's been a while. Everyone's screaming at me in the comments right now. I can see them. Yeah. But yeah, I think it is a certain time travel. It is. I do remember now because the whole storyline is about George Clooney and his, love, and his love interest being. That's weird too. So technically, I'm remembering now. His, like, love interest is, like, a little girl when he's a little kid, and then when he turns, like, 50, he's, like, holding. And I'm like, bro, that girl's like 12, bro. You're like 50. And this is me watching the movie, and I'm like, oh.
Wait, so is the chick that he's on the adventure with the girl he's in love with?
She's like an AI, so she doesn't age. And then when he grows up and he's like 50 again, he like feels nostalgic about it. And he's like, this was my love. And it's...
Wait. So
everyone's in the comments are like, you're saying it wrong. And I'm like, maybe I am, but that's how I remember it.
Wait. So the main... Wait. So
bro, watch this movie. And then tweet me afterwards or something.
I'm confused, man. I'm confused.
And that was the episode on Brad.
No, I need some explanations, goddammit.
Bro, don't ask me for explanations, man. I remember that part of the movie and I'm like, man, this is weird. It's so weird.
Wait. So how was Brett Rob? I think her name is Brett Robinson, right? Is that her name?
Yeah, the little girl. I forget her name.
Or the main character, I think is.
No, it's not her. It's come on, where is she? It's literally like a little 12-year-old girl.
Oh, it's weird.
It's pretty bad. Bad.
Okay,
but yeah, he eventually finds out that was a love, and he loved her when he was like 8, and then she was 8. But now they grow up. And
so, what does the main chick have to do with that? Like in the movie.
That's not her. She's the one who discovered the Tomorrowland pin, which takes her to.
So she's watching the whole thing.
Correct. And she's like a side character to their bizarre love story.
Okay.
I'm telling you, man, this is the original Wrinkle in Time. And it's crazy because I feel that way too about, the Pirates movies is another one example that, man, those movies are rough.
Yeah, the first one's great.
And when it comes to like Disney IP, it's interesting perspective now because I remember going into like these Disney, I forget what it was, but going into these Disney movies now, someone was asking me like, oh, you want to see? I kind of lose interest now because most of the time they're kind of disappointing. And that's why going into Wrinkle in Time, I was already expecting something that I was like, man, I don't like these Disney originals IP movies that Disney makes. I don't like them personally. Like that's kind of my thing.
It's funny. I really enjoyed John Carter. I really enjoyed...
It's another one. Didn't care for it.
I love Tron Legacy.
All these movies that I don't.
Wait, let me think of another one. There's got to be more live action.
There's, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Pirates, of course, yeah. But outside of franchises,
Tomorrowland, and then obviously Wrinkle in Time.
There was one that came out last year. Oh, I guess Jungle Book, but that's more.
Jungle Book, yeah, that's different. But for the most part, I don't care for these movies, and I'm still looking for that little girl. Sorry, man. And it's something that I don't know. I don't feel like watching these. Versus when it comes to like even Disney animated movies, right? When it comes to Disney animated movies, I'm hype because most people are hype when it comes to Pixar movies.
Right.
But when it comes to Disney like Wreck-It Ralph, I love Wreck-It Ralph. It's such amazing. A cool movie that a lot of people don't give credit to. Because it's not Pixar, in my opinion. A lot of people are like, well, it's not Pixar, and it's not as good as... I'm like, I like it as... Remember I told you that? I think I told you in the Pixar episode. I like it as much as, like, Pixar movies. Like, sometimes I even like it more than a few Pixar movies. But when it comes to live action, I feel like they've dropped the ball. But sorry, Brad. This is the one movie that I'm like, But RB3 can't give me his opinion because he hasn't seen it. But you know what?
Nah, I do have.
I'm gonna give you homework, RB3.
Watch.
Go watch Hereditary.
All right. I'll watch that. I'll definitely watch that. I don't know about tomorrow. I'll get around to watching tomorrow. I do have one question though for you.
All right.
Now I do remember when this movie came out. It did. I think some people were talking about how it had like this like environmental kind of message or something like that. Does it have like or what kind of message does this have? What kind of theme lies underneath?
I'm trying to remember. The theme was love is forever, even if you're 50 and you liked a girl that looks like she's 12.
Whoa. Okay.
I don't remember. I'm sorry. Yeah. I believe Hugh Laurie's character is like, I know he's a villain, but yeah.
All right.
That was this episode. Apologies, guys.
I apologize
swear.
for not getting to Tomorrowland.
I apologize for butchering this Tomorrowland discussion. And I apologize for not doing more homework on it because I was going to rely on RB3.
Nah, man. You know what? Hey.
We should have texted each other beforehand.
We should have.
And this would not have happened.
And we should just start signing movies to each other when we...
Dude, we should. That'd be great. So we don't have to see like a ton of movies, like 14 movies in a week. It's hard.
That Ron Howard.
Woo, that one was tough. And I tried. I saw like A Beautiful Mind, and it took me forever. That movie's long, bro.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, that was our episode for the Meaning of podcast on Brad Bird. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully you're not upset at us because we tried our best, but you know, sometimes in life we take a loss, take an L. We Big Sean it, but we gonna come back.
We draked it by taking an L. This is our first time talking about.
I'm upset.
This is our first. This is our first time being on the mics since the beef started. Because like before it started, we were busy.
Pusha T, man, that was mean. Pusha T. That was mean.
We literally like didn't record. Like we literally missed the entire window of the beef.
Sure.
Like.
and it's like now, like we talked a little bit about Ye, and I'm on Kids See Ghosts.
Kids See Ghosts is amazing.
I'm on Kids See Ghosts right now, and I'm on it, bro. Like I'm feeling it. I'm vibing to it.
People are loving it, man.
It's dope.
Yeah, dude, I saw
Cuddy is like my homie, man. I haven't seen Cuddy in years. Cuddy is like one of my favorite rappers, and I love his style. And I this is my high school life, man, and it's back. I'm back with my two favorites, Kid Cudi and Kanye West, and obviously Childish is another one of my favorites, but we talked about him before.
Right.
And now that's why you got to give us a music podcast. Somebody give us a.
I don't think we can do a Kanye episode anymore, though.
I don't think. I mean, you're against it. I'm still open to it. It's up to you, man.
I know the slavery was a choice thing. I mean, I like the albums. It just still makes it hard for me to talk about him.
You like Kanye, man? Oh, how can you like Kanye,
man,
bro?
No, man, it's crazy.
Anyways, guys, that was our episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Come back next week when we talk about an awesome director who we will figure out by next week who it's going to be. We love you guys. Leave us comments down below on what you thought of this episode. And for the Meaning of Podcast, I'm Brad Bird. I am Ace.
This is RB3.
And we are peacing out, guys. Peace out.